The United States has started a war with absolutely no plan. It's very clear. In his meeting with Chancellor Merz yesterday, Trump appeared to admit as much.
I guess the worst case would be we do this and then somebody takes over who's as bad as the previous person, right? That could happen.
That could happen. Like, that's how much this guy has thought about this. In that same meeting, Trump said that he wanted a new Iranian leader from within the current regime, but that they'd killed all the candidates by accident. And we'll look into more detail at those claims, those comments later in the show. Crucially, though, he also said he didn't want the kind of regime change we saw in Iraq, where the entire system was overthrown and civil war broke out. So that's what he's saying. To say he's learned from anything is potentially an overstatement, but he's suggesting, I don't want what happened in Iraq to happen in Iran, so therefore we're not going to try and, completely dissolve the system. However, his actions, if we're to believe this report from CNN, tell a very different story. So according to CNN, the CIA has been working to arm Kurdish forces in order to spark an uprising in Iran. According to CNN sources, the Trump administration has been in active discussions with Iranian opposition groups and Kurdish leaders in Iraq about providing them with military support. A senior Kurdish official said that Iranian Kurdish opposition forces are expected to take part in a ground operation in western Iran in the coming days. And the report says this. One person familiar with the discussion said that the idea would be for Kurdish armed forces to take on the Iranian security forces and pin them down to make it easier for unarmed Iranians in the major cities to turn out without getting massacred again, as they were during unrest in January. Another US official said the Kurds could help sow chaos in the region and stretch the Iranian regime's military resources thin. Still others have centered around whether the Kurds could take and hold territory in the northern part of Iran that would create a buffer zone for Israel. So not hiding why that would be useful. This is just insane, though. They're saying basically, what we're going to do, we're going to arm the Kurds and they're going to distract the IRGC. And then the liberals in the cities, they can then have their protest and revolution without getting shot because all the guns will be busy in a fight with the Kurds in the north. Like, it's just insane.
It's insane on multiple levels. First of all, Reza Pahlavi, who is the only alternative politically in terms of the current government, has said that one of his red lines is territorial integrity for the country as it presently exists. Of course, if you're arming a separatist militia, kind of undermines that argument. And many of his supporters have been online, people I don't have the time of day for, frankly, have been online saying this is awful, this cannot happen, right? So that's one thing. And of course, that would bleed through to the fact that if this did ultimately unfold, those protesters wouldn't be as naive as to think all of that. Those same protesters inside Iran, they very much exist, millions of them, right? Also see territorial integrity as a very, very important issue, very much a red line. So that's the first level. Secondly, why would you broadcast all of this, right? Again, it goes back to my point about propaganda. They are trying to demoralize the government, the regime. They're trying to demoralize people all the way down the chain of command, from Larijani to a junior Basiji who's a 20-year-old dude in Tehran, walking around in a T-shirt, maintaining the rule of law, right? Trying to maintain martial law. This is all to demoralize these people. So I think the fact they're broadcasting this, which actually is something which many people who support regime change find abhorrent and don't support, in a way, I think this is a signal of weakness. I know why they would do it. I'm sure they will do it, right? I personally have always said the plan is to create a failed state and balkanize the country. Iran, endgame is Syria meets Yugoslavia. But I don't know why you would broadcast it and telegraph it at this point in the whole process. And I think, to me, trying to think outside the box, and maybe I'm wrong, is that it's kind of a little bit desperate.
It is a very strange thing to broadcast because it's, it's going to be very bad for the Kurds to have this broadcast because it obviously puts a big target on their head, on their communities.
And not just from central government, not just from the Iranians, but also from Turkey, right? Because, look, Iran has a huge Kurdish population, actually, very large, 10, 12, 15 million people, and they're not all separatists. This is a stupid thing. Remember, of course, Kurdish culture is a Persianate culture. They have Nowruz. The Kurdish language is an Iranic language. So there's slightly less tension than there is historically between Kurds and Turks. I'm not saying it's, all apple pie and, dances in the garden and tea parties, but it's a different relationship. But anyway, if you're Turkey and you're Erdogan, you don't want Kurdish separatists in a country which, is very nearby, being armed to the teeth and getting experience of guerrilla warfare and maybe even making some territorial gains. You'll stop that. So again, it just doesn't make sense to me. You're broadcasting it. Why? Yes, Tehran is going to get prepared. It's going to really undermine your message with your target audience inside the country, but also Erdogan and the Turks, all of a sudden, they have a trigger response, right? Wait, hold on, you're arming the Kurds? Absolutely no way. And I should also add, the Kurds, repeatedly, poor people, they should have had a country after Versailles. They are a nation. The Kurds have repeatedly been used as a toy like this, as a tool by Western powers, and they are always let down. They're always murdered. They always lose out. The same will happen here. And of course, there are many people in Iranian Kurdistan who know that. They're not stupid. They read history.
Okay, I've got an interview on this because obviously, even if the United States are seeking to ally with Iran's Kurds, or if this is just some sort of ridiculous briefing, that doesn't mean that there are Iranian Kurds who want to play ball for many of the reasons you've just suggested. Now, earlier today, I spoke to Sara Kamanian. She's a Kurdish Iranian doctoral tutor in the Department of International Relations at the University of Sussex. I asked her for her response to that CNN report.
Well, first of all, I think we need to wait how Kurdish parties are going to respond to this and whether there is any base, because I think that the report was a bit to an extent speculative and not actually very definitive. So it was mostly showing the US's desire to use the Kurds as its artillery, which we know actually they have had this desire, because something paradoxical about this war is that the US has been claiming, according to their national security document, the one that Trump wrote a few months ago, according to that, they want to avoid falling into the trap of another Iraq or Afghanistan kind of plan. But it can happen because with the 12-day war with Iran, they opened the Pandora box that no one exactly knows how it is going to be wrapped up, how this war is going to come to an end. So it might actually become quite inevitable for the US to enter Iran, and they would prefer someone else to do it instead of them, of course. So, of course, this is something that the US might be planning to do. But whether or not Kurds have decided to do that, or the scope to which they have decided to do that, is something else that we need not to really just speculate based on what CNN report says. And the main reason for that is that at the moment, as I said, both the Islamic Republic and their largest opposition, they are both securitizing any action done by the Kurds. On the other hand, the Kurds are being pushed into this into a conflict. I mean, when you think about it, they are being threatened by the Islamic Republic, by their opposition. Turkey is right across the corner. If there is a power vacuum, they might actually try to do another Rojava scenario, come and occupy Kurdish regions. Israel have really, Israel benefits a lot from pushing the Islamic Republic into the point of becoming a failed state. And of course, kind of bringing them into some sort of civil war in Kurdistan could ignite that sort of tension. So I think there are many forces on the ground who are benefiting from pushing the Kurds into this security trap. It is into their interests. And whether or not the Kurds are actually willing to take up arms, they still need to do self-defense. The time might come that they need to be armed, that they need to take up arms. Where they're taking it, I mean, they already have some, but where they are being supported from, this is another question. But I think kind of thinking about the Kurds simply becoming proxy, as some people are referring to it, as proxy kind of forces of the US, is really not seeing the larger picture, that they are being forced into these security traps. They might, the time might come that they might need to actually defend themselves. And the fact that actually the US doesn't have a great record of supporting the Kurds. I mean, look at Rojava, right? They were once the US allies in their fight against ISIS. And when it came to Jolani targeting Rojava, basically they received no support from the United States. So it's important to, I think what CNN report does is that they are all playing their game into cornering Kurds, the point of being forced to take up, and then they have to basically seek it from somewhere, seek support from somewhere. This is, I think the Kurds have the right to self-defense. They have right to self-determination. But it's also important. As I said, I prefer to wait and see what the Kurdish parties eventually decide. But they have shown in the past, at least, good political wisdom in the sense of where they have to take up arms, when they have to resist, and things like that. So at the moment, I think in a situation where even Arab states or NATO, they're trying to stay away from this conflict that no one knows whether there is an end into it. Kurds should not be the people who pay the price. But I think the way CNN reported it, they were trying to show it is something beyond that, something beyond self-defense, something about turning the Kurds into proxy forces of the US, which I think is a very unfair judgment to have at the moment.
And I suppose, is there a danger that sort of the idea of being able to do self-defense becomes self-fulfilling, I suppose, in a way? Because if you have this group of Kurds who sort of, for the sake of self-defense, have become armed, then that in itself becomes a reason for the Islamic Republic to go in and repress those people, because they say that the fact that they're arming or trying to defend themselves, that is itself a pretext, a reason to clamp down on those peoples and that region.
Exactly. Actually, some reports say that the Islamic Republic, IRGC, has also been kind of trying to send forces towards Kurdish areas. So that might happen actually in the near future. But there is another, as you said, this is one of the dangers of this sort of rhetorics, because they just basically motivate the Islamic Republic to have all the more reasons to go and start a war in that area, which I think is something that Israel has planned. So I prefer to insist on this aspect of the story, that the Kurds have not yet decided to make any collaboration with any state. And if they do, are still willing to distinguish between a situation where they are doing it after they're being attacked, whether it is just self-defense or whether it is something beyond that. But the situation is very paradoxical, as they can see, because yes, of course, arming themselves, it can have security repercussions, but not being prepared also might have its security implications. It's a very paradoxical situation that this conflict has put the Kurds in.
The death of Ayatollah Khamenei, I mean, how will that have been received? I mean, obviously, Kurdish Iranians don't speak as one, but sort of in the Kurdish regions. So as far as I understand, as you said, the Kurds in Iran don't particularly feel recognized or represented by either the Islamic Republic or the Pahlavistic opposition. So sort of, is it just a wait and see, hold your breath moment?
In a way it is, although the Kurds have always tried to be more proactive. So at least in this, and some Kurdish parties are already talking about the importance of trying to organize people like grassroots groups to be prepared to govern themselves, to organize themselves if a power vacuum is created, instead of rushing into the armed solution. And the armed solution could only be used if it is needed to defend this basically self-governing unit. So it shouldn't be anything beyond that. This is what from what I've heard, some parties and also many kind of Kurdish scholars, activists, etc., are kind of thinking is the best way to go. Regarding the death of Khamenei, I mean, this is no hidden fact that most people in Iran, even those who are quite against war, even those who are suffering the war, are quite happy from the death of Khamenei, but at the same time don't have the luxury of being happy even, because they're under war. But there is a sense of desperation, I think, at the moment among some people that Khamenei has died. Everyone for years were kind of thinking that the moment of his death is going to be the moment of the overthrowing of a theocratic, authoritarian regime. But now they're experiencing it under a condition of war. At the same time, if they have not collapsed, there are still talks of the possibility of negotiation. What if Khamenei has died and also the state is going to be restored, which is actually something that also threatens the future of Kurdistan a lot. Because if they take up arms now, if they resist now, and the Islamic Republic end up being restored, then they are going to pay the price. And if Pahlavis take over power, still they're going to translate these acts of self-defense as separatism, and they're going to attack them. Is the US going to support them when that happens? Well, many things are still quite, the security implications of them are quite high. So yes, as you say, it's mostly like a moment of people have to kind of wait and see what's going to happen next. The contingency of the situation is really high. There are many things we cannot predict, and it seems that the U.S. is kind of, as we know, Trump, he always keeps the discourse and the objectives of the conflicts he enters in quite vague, so deliberately quite vague. So yes, the situation, I think, is a bit of, we need to go with the contingency of the situation and see what happens next.